Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of Civivis. This will be a comparison video, and this all started with this knife right here. So I wanted to check out a Civivi Dogma. I really like the design of this, especially after they moved away from the blade hole and went to the fuller. I really think that was a nice touch. And so I was looking for one. Justin over at White Mountain Knives had one in stock. By the way, use my discount code over there and you can save 10% on either one of these knives. But so Justin had some in stock. He didn't have, I think, the regular version. He just had various fancy versions, and I liked this one, so I picked this up. Anyway, I started to have second thoughts, and I was worried that the Dogma would be a little small for me and I wouldn't be satisfied with it. So I had seen the shredder before. They reminded me of one another. So I went ahead and picked up a shredder as well. So that's this knife here, because it's similar in its design to the Dogma and similar in features, but just bigger. Now, it's not exactly the same. You can see there are some differences there, even as you're looking in the picture, and we'll go over some of those differences, but there are a lot of similarities here. And so I thought, if I don't love the Dogma, I'll probably appreciate the shredder a little more. And so I was trying to hedge my bets and save myself the potential disappointment of getting this knife and being, not satisfied with it because of the smaller size. All right, so obviously that's going to be one of the primary differences between these two, but I purposely got these, as this kind of being the larger version of this, even though it's not entirely accurate. So let me do a quick rundown on size and weight first of all, and I think, it's quite obvious that these are different. So 7 3/4 overall on the Dogma, 3.5 inches of blade, 4 15/16 handle, 3 11/16 inches of grip area. So quite a generous grip area for a small knife, and weighs in at only 3.1 ounces. The shredder, of course, is bigger. You can see that just as you're looking at it here, but I'll give you the numbers as well. 8 9/16 on the overall size here on the shredder, 3 3/4 inches of blade, 4 13/16 is the closed dimension. All right, 4 inches of grip area, and both of these, by the way, so I already mentioned the grip area over here was 3 11/16. This one's full 4 inches. Both of them, of course, also have a choil, and the weight on the Dogma is 3.7 ounces. It was like 3.69, so we'll just round up to 3.7 ounces. All right, so that's size and weight. Now, I want to begin by pointing out that it turns out the Dogma was actually fine. I really, for a smaller knife, I find this does a really good job. And I'll talk about that more when we get to handle construction and ergonomics and all that kind of stuff. But for now, under the size and weight category, pretty clearly the Dogma is going to be smaller and easier to carry, weigh a little bit less, while not asking you to sacrifice much. And therefore, in this aspect of the size comparison, I've got to give the points to the Dogma, because even though it's smaller, it does a lot with the limited amount of space that it has. So really good job on size and weight with the Dogma, especially the blade to handle ratio and the size to blade length ratio. Really well done. Blades on both of these are D2. Normally, this will be Civivi's 9CR Damascus, but we're going to imagine we're comparing the two same models. All right, so normally this would be D2. Both of them would be with a clip point. Here we have a clip point as well. Both hollow grind, a different way of doing a clip point, by the way, but both hollow ground. We've got a hole in this blade, no hole here. I don't know, I think it'd be cool to have a shredder with the similar blade design, and I don't know, maybe Civivi will go that direction since they did that with the Dogma. But either way, I like the shredder quite a bit. But very similar approaches with both of these blades. Yes, there's more cutting edge on the shredder, a little more belly on the Dogma, but both of these have this great hollow grind and very thin edge. So these will slice like crazy. And let me point out now, and by the way, I've finished both reviews on these, but I wanted to do this video first because I kind of bought them as comparisons. So I felt like the comparison video should come out first, and the reviews, I'll publish them sometime later. But I've had quite a bit of time to spend with both of these. I've actually carried them both on my person at the same time quite a bit, and carried them separately as well, used them together and separately. So I've spent a bit of time here, and both slice like crazy. Obviously, the Dogma offers a little bit more cutting edge, not a whole ton more. The extra belly on the Dogma, I do kind of like the look of that a little more than the Shredder, but in terms of EDC cutting tasks, I don't find that extra belly is super necessary. Like, I can live without it, and I don't think the slightly less belly that the Shredder has takes anything away from that. All right. I guess I should also point out that both of them, right, well, it's a whole versus a fuller. Both of these serve as a deployment option, which is kind of nice and certainly welcome. All right, so in the standard configuration, and I guess we could also say I did check around a little bit to see, and if you're looking to buy a Dogma, there are still lots of places that have the Dogmas with the hole in stock. So if that's your preference over mine, and of course the other thing is a lot of the fancier ones won't have it because they're the newer versions. All right. Okay, so having gotten all that stuff out of the way in terms of the blade, this is all I've got to say about this. I think these blades are just too close to call a winner, right? Yeah, there's a little more belly, so if you like that, or if you have a particular use for your knife that needs a little more belly, then the Dogma might be the way to go. There's a little more cutting edge on the Shredder, so again, if you need that extra cutting edge, then the Shredder might be the way to go. Both of them, though, again, are similar philosophy in that neither one of these are big, heavy-duty, hefty, thick blades with thick grinds and thick blade stock. Neither one of these have that. So one is not particularly tougher than the other, and one doesn't really slice better than the other. They're very, very close. All right. So that's going to be a tie. Moving on to now the action or lockup and deployment, however you want to talk about this. Both of these are essentially exactly the same, right? They're both using Civivi's ceramic bearing pivot. They both have liner locks that are fairly easy to work. They both have flipper tabs that, again, feel very similar, smaller on the smaller side of the flipper tab scale. The detent on both is really, really nicely dialed in. The other similarity they have that's sort of a negative similarity is both of these blades are very lightweight. So while they will fall shut, you got to shake it a little bit. And that's just because there's very little weight out front here, and that's true on both of these knives. And by the way, as I've been using and carrying these, I have gone ahead and cleaned them up and put a little KPL in there. So both of these, I would say, are performing at this point a little better than factory. Finally, the last point is both of these are easily able to be thumb rolled open or spidey flicked open with the fuller the fuller in the case of the Dogma, or the hole in the case of the Shredder. And so in terms of action, they are so close, again, that we have to call it a tie. So finally, let's move on to the one point that they do have more significant differences, and that is in the handle. Now, in the standard handle on the Dogma, I have to say this, I don't love the faux bolster. Here, I find the layered carbon fiber camouflages it a little bit. And even in this configuration, I would have preferred had they just carried the texturing all the way throughout. All right, jig bone, I think, is kind of what they're copying there. So they could have gone with the jig bone pattern like all the way to the front of the scale, and it would have, I don't know, I feel like it would have just made the knife a little more appealing. I'm not a fan generally of faux bolsters. I don't mind it as much here, but you can see how this is nice and clean and plain. Now the shredder, both of these, by the way, are available in a few other configurations. You can do plain G10, you can do blue layered G10 or red layered G10 on the shredder. These are available in the carbon fiber and G10 layered in this color or a lighter color. They're also available in bronze. And I think you can do the black and Damascus or satin in at least a couple of the fancier handle options. I can't remember every single possible variation, but there are a few variations out there, and you should be able to find the one that you happen to like the best. While we're talking about handles and ergonomics and performance here, I do want to point out when I did my initial reaction video to these, I really, really liked them both. And, a couple people kind of took that to mean that something in between the two would be even more perfect. And perhaps it would, but the Ortis was brought up a couple of times. And the Ortis is actually smaller even than the Dogma. It's another quarter of an inch smaller. And so for me, that was a hard pass. I just don't anticipate the Ortis being very appealing to me, especially when the Dogma just gets the hand size right. Okay, so in terms of the winner here, really, again, construction is the same. They're both liner locks, same kind of liner lock. There's not much to say. Both clips are deep carry clips. They are both movable. Right, both have backspacer construction. All right, so in all those regards, these are really, really the same. The big difference is going to be in the ergonomics department. And here I have to, first of all, I've got to give the Dogma a lot of credit because this is a smaller knife, under 8 inches, which is usually my cutoff point. But notice how I can get a full 4-finger grip on here. And that's, I still have the option of using the choil. The contoured handle does feel really, really nice. And so this is a pretty comfortable knife, and it's a small-ish knife that I like a lot. I don't find I have to make any compromises at all. I get the blade length that I want. I get the handle real estate that I want. And so I love this. In terms of knives on the smaller end of the scale, this is one of the best ones that I've seen out there. Now, you guys know I tend to like bigger stuff a little bit more. And so the shredder is mildly more appealing to me. I do, and it does feel just a titch nicer in hand. I just don't feel quite as cramped. I don't feel like the knife is kind of squeezing my fingers into a particular area. I've got a little more room to sort of spread out. And for that reason, the shredder just slightly takes the ergonomic lead ahead of the Dogma, but I mean just slightly. I would say this: if you have much bigger hands than I do, then you might have more of a pronounced issue with the Dogma. However, I don't know. Let's see, how much extra room have I got? You could have another, quarter inch or, less than a quarter inch here. So someone with slightly larger hands than mine could still, I think, handle the Dogma comfortably. But at that point, you'd still probably feel like I would and want to go up to the shredder. All right. And I know that's a very minor difference. Again, I need to reiterate that the Dogma is a lot of knife for a small size. The handle is excellent. The choil is excellent. And in my full review, the main point I make about the Dogma is I feel like this is a smaller knife that doesn't ask me to make any compromises. And as I'm saying that, I think I might change the title and make that the title of my full review on the Dogma is a small knife with no compromises. The shredder is, yes, a little bigger. I love the design. I love the blade shape. The weird thing about the shredder is I've almost gotten conditioned at this point to think that, larger knives are going to be more heavy duty. And this really isn't. This is not a hard use knife. It's just a really well done cutting tool for those sort of average EDC type of tasks. All right. Now, if I had to pick only one of these, if I couldn't keep them both, if I had to get rid of one, which one would I get rid of? First, let me say I would not be rushing out to get rid of either one of these because they're both fantastic. And really, these two are at this point my very favorite Civivis. Um, but I would keep the Dogma for one reason, and I think and the reason is that I have rarely seen a knife of this size that I like as much as this. In fact, I don't I don't have very many other knives this size in my collections, specifically because usually I just feel like the compromises that I'm asked to make to get a knife of this size are more than I'm interested in making. But the Dogma is such a well done knife. It feels great in hand. I still have that choil if I want to choke up. The bit of flat blade back here allows me to have lots of room for my thumb when I get into that choil. Being very lightweight, it's easy to carry, in almost any attire, whatever kind of pants I may be wearing, even if they're workout pants. And because of the small size, although it is a fairly aggressive looking blade, I think the decorative nature of this one gets me a pass for in front of the sheeple. So because of the sort of unique position that the Dogma holds as being a smaller knife that still feels and functions like a larger knife, that's what stands out to me about that. If it was just about my own preference and about, ergonomics and use, the shredder probably, appeals to me slightly more. But the Dogma is such a unique knife that that would be the one I would keep. Now, in a perfect world, I would just get both, and that's what I have. And so whichever one of these appeals to you more, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. They're both exceptional examples of the kind of work that Civivi pretty typically does, and so I think both of these are huge wins, and I can easily recommend either one. Again, look for my reviews to come out fairly shortly on these. Both of these did come from White Mountain Knives, so if you want one, go over there, use my discount code SHARPSTUFF. You'll save yourself a little bit of money. At the end, I've got to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for patronizing those channel sponsors. That's a big help to the channel and kind of a win-win for everybody. We'll talk to you soon.